Welcome to the next episode of Burning Boxes and Breaking Chains. The podcast is all about accountability, and we're still talking on the topic of It's My Fault. Welcome, my friend Clifton Beck. Clifton and I have known each other for a number of years, and we've done business together in with different companies. And he agreed to join me today, and we're going to talk about It's My Fault. Welcome, Clifton.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. You know,
Go
I love
ahead.
what you're doing here, by the way.
Thank you very much, sir. It's something that's become a passion of mine, and I see in the world today, as I even when I walk around stores, that people just don't hold themselves accountable for anything.
No,
You
no.
know, from putting shopping carts back, picking up trash when they drop it on the ground, it's just and blaming others for their lot in life. So I don't get it. I mentioned on a podcast earlier recording that I have found that holding myself accountable for what I say, what I do, how I act, and all that is a very liberating feeling to me because reminds me I'm in control of this, not what happens to me. I'm responsible for the outcome.
Man, that's a tough one sometimes. And I
It is, especially when everybody's wanting to blame you for stuff,
yeah.
So let me ask you, and I start off this with just about everybody is was there a time in your life when something happened and you looked at it and looked yourself in the mirror and said, "This was my fault," and it made a big difference?
I've been trying to figure out which one is going to have the most impact. So,
See, that's what I love about the people I associate with, Clifton. It's like,
yeah,
okay, which pick one.
yeah, you're right. I know you got plenty. Pick one, and that's why I
Oh
appreciate
yeah.
you doing this. You're inviting people to step out of their comfort zone, even if they're already good speakers. Sometimes speaking about ourself is not easy. It's comfortable speaking about our profession, but speaking about ourself is not always the easiest thing.
Yeah, absolutely true.
So what I've chosen to talk about, it's kind of tough for me, but I think it's extremely important in this industry. I am I guess I'm still learning how that whole work life balance. And as I'm getting older, I'm getting better. But as a younger man in the industry, I was very driven to work. I I loved working a lot. And I thought that the harder that I worked and the more I provided for my family, the better off my family was going to be. And the more that they would appreciate me. And it was a hard lesson to learn. We've mentioned this before. I don't talk about it a whole lot, but I probably should be talking about it more often. I've been divorced twice, and wonderful people. I Now that I have the opportunity to look back and actually spend time reflecting on my fault of the scenarios, I've found plenty of things and worked on majority of them. Melanie would say that I'm still a work in progress, but I'm still working. But the one that really has been the most important to me as I start understanding that is many times when we go through separations in life, we reflect on the immediate relationship. Like going through a divorce, you focus on how you impacted that relationship.
Mhm.
What did you add to that situation that it eventually came to a separation? And it takes a lot of work to get to that point.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
I truly do. I've sought many alternative means of therapy, most of which caused self-inflicted harm. So I highly encourage professionals. But the one that I had to face that had probably the strongest impact for my growth was understanding my fault in my relationship with my son
Ooh.
after divorce. And that was not something that I planned on because as a parent, we always say that we're going to love our children unconditionally through thick and thin. And most of the time we keep that in the front of our life. But sometimes when life is difficult, sometimes we allow those um, those perspectives to slip.
Yeah.
And my son was pretty young. He was like 9 years old when we went through first divorce, and it's very devastating for him. And it took a long time of struggling with our relationship before I started focusing on him and understanding and realizing that I wasn't there for him in the capacity that I needed to be there for him.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're going through life, when we're going through struggles, especially if we're going through, you know, uh, separations in life, which creates its own anxieties and its own stresses, we sometimes forget about the ones that rely on us for support.
Yep.
So when I look back at those times where I was working so much and thinking that I was providing for my family because I was providing financial support, it wasn't until a little bit later in life after the divorce that I realized that the emotional support was so much more needed than the financial support was. And it was my fault.
Yeah.
I had the wrong perspective. I was doing things for what I thought was the right reason. And it was a good reason. It's always good to provide financially for your family. But what I realized was that my own my own struggle created the struggles in a relationship with my son, and it took years to mend. I actually had to get to a point in life where I was willing to step back from my work responsibilities and focus more on my relationship responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that in two different phases. At one, when he was in high school, and I decided it was time for me to stop working part time because even though I was working, 50 plus hours a week in HVAC and refrigeration, I was still working part time at AutoZone. It had great discounts on parts and tools, and I loved helping people. And I that whole time, 16 years, I worked there part time. And that whole time, I thought, boy, the more money I can make, the better off my family's going to be. And as my son was getting into his teenage years, I started realizing that those extra times, those weekends, those evenings, I was taken away from our relationship time. And so I did. I finally stepped back away from that, got down to just one job, started spending more time on the weekends, building the relationship with my son. And as he was becoming a senior in high school, I actually decided that I was ready to do something different, that I didn't want to be on call all the time, and that I didn't want to, you know, run 80 hours a week, which I was at the time, that I wanted to be able to enjoy a little bit more of that time with him before it was gone. And I made the decision that I was willing to step back and take a 20 plus $1,000 pay cut to go from being a field service mobile engineer into doing education, which got me into a day job, and it strengthened my relationship. So understanding it was my fault in putting work income above relationship with my family, in particular with my child. It was one of the biggest challenges I think I've had in life as an adult.
I cannot relate to the divorce and the child, being that person going through a divorce. I relate to it from the other end.
Right.
Because when I was 9 years old, I remember my mother asking me one time that if she and my father separated, who would I want to live with? And my dad was my hero.
Yep.
And when I said that to her, she held that against me,
Yep.
in my opinion, for many years.
Right.
And he and I truly didn't straighten out our relationship until I was in my early 20s, because I had found a venue and an avenue to straighten out my head and was able to make that first step, And I'm proud to say though, when he passed away this year, will be 14 years ago, he considered me his best friend.
Mhm.
So we mended those fences, and it took a while. Like I said, so I mean, here I was thinking it was my fault they were breaking up. And then my mom, I felt like she was blaming me. So that emotional connection, especially at that age, because when they did split up, I was 12, and Lord knows the wheels fell off of my wagon in a hurry, and I went down a rabbit hole for a number of years I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. You know,
Mm. Yeah,
so
so true.
yeah, but I look at it now, it's like, even blaming them, that was, some of those feelings were my fault. But I didn't know how to take accountability for them then. And it got to the point where I was later on, I said something to my father. I said, if you ever see me with another drink in my hand, I said, I want you to knock me down. That's what I told him. And he said, that's not your problem. He said, you got an anger problem. And I
Mm.
went, wow. So I had to start looking at myself in the mirror and say, what is that about? And that's what started. I had some therapy and stuff as well too, and it's like had to start peeling that onion back, and that's what allowed me to heal me, which allowed me to heal relationships with them
Mm.
on both sides. Being able to look back and say, hey, and it's sort of like you. I mean, and I think if you peel that onion back a little bit, that about providing financially is probably something you learned somewhere, and you're just doing what you had been taught. Whether it's listening to family or watching other people, that the man always provides for his family. That's what it's about. But you still got to provide more than just financial, and that's a huge thing too. So I applaud you for realizing it, and taking accountability for that. So how's your relationship with him today?
It's amazing. It
There you
it it
go.
it really has completely changed, even as a teenager. When I made that first decision to step back away from the part-time job so that I can, spend a little bit more time, because he was a teenage boy, who'd went through divorce. He's bound to be defiant, and was, and so we had a struggle with that. And when I stepped away from the part-time job, got back to just one job, was able to spend more time with him, it healed a lot of things in my life. It even healed relationship with his mother, to the
Oh,
point where
awesome.
she realized how much our relationship was growing. And by the time Matthew was going into his senior year of high school, she actually approached me and said, I am absolutely amazed at how close the two of you have gotten, and he really needs you, and I can see how much the two of you are really rebonding. Do you want him to move in with you for his senior year of high school? He's mentioned it quite a few times, and it'd be closer to school for him. It'd be convenient, and I think it'd be good for you. And that was not anything I would have ever expected, but because I had worked on the harm that I had done with her, with our family, with my son, it
Mm-hmm.
it truly mended that relationship. And so by the time I moved away from the service field and got into education, I actually ended up becoming friends with my ex-wife and her husband, and the relationship with my son has grown ever since. And so it was really one of the things that I had to own.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
it was my fault, and I had to do some repairing.
I'm telling you, man, it's when I stepped back and look at that years ago and admitted this was my fault. That accountability allows me to say, "Yep, I own this,"
Mm.
and it's my responsibility to move past it, move through it, or whatever the case may be. So I applaud you. That's awesome, though, that you were able to even make a good relationship with her again after the fact. But it goes to show, though, what I tell people all the time: your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. And it sounds like she was watching your actions, and they proved themselves out. That's why she got on board and offered that, which is pretty cool.
I agree.
Yep. So what's he up to today?
So He's been almost a lifelong firefighter. He started
Good for
his
him.
volunteer work at 13, which was about when we, started spending more time together. Started with the sheriff's department, and then started doing the volunteer cadet program with the fire department. And then by the time he graduated high school, in his high school, we have a vocational program where you can go your junior year and your senior year of high school, half of the day at your local high school and half of the day at their Career 9 center. And so they have 9 different curriculums that you can get college credit, you get your certificates, and you get your experience. They even have an HVAC program as well. But he went through for firefighting, so he had his EMT before he graduated high school, and
Wow.
yeah, had his full time offering by the time he was 19, and so he's been in firefighting. He's 26 now and doing very well. And we
Dude,
talk
that's
regularly.
awesome.
And
I think at 13, man, I was still experimenting with matches to see what would burn and what wouldn't burn. I mean, that was me. I mean, and
yeah,
growing up living in a trailer, and I remember one day, you just flash back, I'd forgotten about this. I was out playing around in the backyard, and we used to have grass. It was really dry in the summertime. It was almost a waist high in our, close to our trailer.
right,
And I set that mess on fire, man, and it was moving toward the trailer. And you don't want a trailer to catch on fire. They burn pretty daggum quick,
right.
So it's like that was me at 13. So he and I were worlds apart.
Well, it is interesting, though, you mentioned that, yeah, because I think back about how, repairing those things I took ownership for may have changed more than just my life. I
Oh, yeah.
remember, like, after the divorce, he was probably 11, and he was over at my house, and I had carpeted the front porch, just indoor outdoor carpet, and I came home, and there was a big burn spot on the carpet. I was like, "What are you doing? Did you do that?" I was playing with matches, and I one got hot, and
Yeah,
I burnt
that
the
happens.
floor. But then just a few years later, he wanted to put out fires, and so I hope that by taking ownership of my actions, maybe it helped him grow and find confidence in me and changed his direction, went from creating fires to putting out fires.
That's awesome. That's good. I'm glad he's doing well now. You say he's now
Yes.
26?
Yeah.
Wow, man.
I'm
Getting
getting
on up
old. I'll
there.
be
I
50
know.
here in a couple of weeks.
Oh, shush up. I got you. I was in high school when you were born, dude. Are you kidding me? We don't want to talk about that.
Well,
So,
I absolutely appreciate our friendship, Jeff. It's
oh, I do
grown
too.
from a professional relationship to a true friendship, and I
I agree.
absolutely love what you're doing here, helping people talk about the uncomfortable things in life and talking about the things that we do to others that causes harm, in which we need to own and
Well,
most
it's
times
funny you
fix.
say that because a lot of times as I was making changes many years ago, it got down to the point where I would have to do an inventory.
Mhm.
It's like, and then it was part of the thing, when you were wrong, promptly admit it.
Yep.
And, that takes the power, that gives power to you too. It's self-empowering to be able to go up to somebody and be vulnerable and say, "Hey, I'm sorry I said that. I was wrong." You know, and depending on what it may have been, years ago when I was acting an idiot, sometimes I jokingly tell people that I was the guy when I was a teenager. People didn't want me back a second time to apologize for what I did the first time. But now it's like, being able to own that and to show that vulnerability is empowering to me because I don't let people, they don't have to blame me for things. If I know I did wrong, or even if I didn't, and I said or did something wrong and you point it out to me and I go, "You're right. I'm sorry. I didn't, I wasn't thinking about it. Or I was thinking about something else or whatever it was." But taking ownership of that is just hugely empowering to me. I know it is to other people that have been on the podcast. And this is great because I am lining up people left and right, man.
I bet you
And
are.
being able to hopefully one day I'll get to the point where I'm doing a live podcast. So you and I'll talk about that later. I'm sure that'll cost me more money too. Most of the times I talk to you, I wind up spending more money on things, man. Like even some of the lighting I have in here now is due to a conversation I had with you at one point in time. So, but no, it's very cool, and I love the fact that, and that's one of the things. This past year, I became a DISC certified consultant too with John Maxwell Group, and I'm learning more about the personalities, and they're like fingerprints.
You bet.
You know, you may have a DS personality and somebody that you know is a DS, but you're still at a different range on that chart. You're still
Right.
different. You're still very unique. You know, but it took me a long time to quit laughing because on that, you know, because it gives you a chart to tell you where you are.
Yep.
I'm an I.
Mm.
Everything else is below zero. I mean, I'm just an I. And so, I mean, and I've told people for years, if I'm not having fun, I'm not doing it. Just
Right.
quit. I don't want any part of it. You know? So much so, some
Explains a
friends of
lot.
mine, you know, a couple of friends of mine, we went to Pensacola a number of years ago because I had a rental property up there and it needed a new roof. It was a Palm Harbor mobile home. And I couldn't find anybody up there because I am very capable of using my hands and doing those types of
Sure.
things. So when I look for pricing, I look at what it would cost me to do it versus the time they saved me to do it. So, and then, you know, you factor in the 8-hour drive too.
Mm-hmm.
But they were ridiculous. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. So I was like, I'm not paying that, you know. And so these two friends of mine, one who used to own a roofing company, we said, well, listen, why don't you get the materials and we'll just make a guy's weekend of it. We'll head up there and re-roof it. I said, sounds like a plan. I mean, this thing literally was 16 feet wide, 68 feet long. Pretty straightforward. And I talked to my realtor who was handling the rental of the property and collecting fees from me every month. She said, you know, your tenant came by here the other day to pay the bill, and she said y'all were having way too much fun on that roof of that house. I said, I gotta tell you, me and these two guys, man, if we're not laughing and cutting up, we don't want to be involved,
Yep.
you know. So yeah, that's the way it is, man. You know, you gotta have fun, but you also have to take some things seriously. But don't take life too seriously because you're not getting out of here alive anyway.
No, we're
You
all
know,
going to the same place.
absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. So what's next? You know, I know Melanie's doing well. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's one of the back to what I started to say a while ago. But that's the nice thing about the people that I've been inviting on this. They come from all walks of life.
Yeah.
They all have different stories about what got them to where they are today. But I'm picking them because at one point in time they did say this was my fault, and it started making changes in them, and they allowed those changes to happen. And when you look back on it now, it's like, man, who in the world was I? The case, yeah, dude. That's I ran across a letter that my father saved when I sent him one time when I was a teenager, and I read that letter and I'm like, dude, you lost your mind.
Who's this guy?
180 degrees different from the
Mm-hmm.
guy I am today. I'm like, who was that?
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Yes, it is. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. I think I've pretty well gotten to a good place. We're going to become empty nesters here in just a few months.
Oh wow,
Melanie's youngest is graduating high school. She's ready to start life, wanting to move in with her older sister, who's getting ready to graduate from college. So we're getting ready to put the house up for sale and
move to the
move on
farm
to another, probably.
or move
If we
out to
can
the
get,
farm.
if I can encourage Melanie too. If not, we'll just be downsizing and starting that next chapter in life, spending more time on the road with our new mobile studio.
Oh, dude, that's
So
awesome. Yeah.
that's what's
So
happening
how
next.
far do you live right how far is the
Mhm.
farm from that, rental place where you got the studio?
Right now it's about an hour and 20 minutes. Like the
Okay.
studio, I could hit it with a slingshot from here.
Uh,
Oh yeah,
okay.
and then the farm's about an hour and 20
Farm's
minutes from
further
here.
out, yeah.
So
That's awesome. So, yeah, it's good for you investing
thank
in
you.
that, investing in things that, for the future and being able to a lot of people don't realize that, the accountability too is taking care of our health.
Yes, it is.
And that health and, you know, it's like sometimes when you say, "Hey, what's on your diet?" It's not just about food. It's about rest, relaxation,
Mhm.
recharging your batteries. What are you listening to? What are you telling yourself? Because in all honesty, I think a lot of people they're oop, I
There
don't
you
know
go.
what happened here, but a lot of people miss the boat on the fact that their mind is the best tool they have at their disposal.
You bet.
You know, I tell people a lot of times it's the most powerful and the most devious tool that you own. Because, dude, I know sometimes years ago, man, when I was just sitting there talking to myself, I was talking to a sick puppy.
You'll betcha.
Oh, you know, so yeah, you got to be careful and you got to stay on your P's and Q's with that stuff. All right,
Indeed.
so I got a question before we
Okay.
wrap this up. If you could give our audience some advice on some things that they could do or might want to start doing on holding themselves accountable, what would it be?
Oh, I would say to evaluate your work and family life. Evaluate it and ask your family, are you working too much? Just a simple question. Ask every one of them, and they will give you their honest opinion if you ask in a genuine manner. And let that be input for you instead of trying to determine it on your own. Ask your loved ones if you are working too much and not giving them enough of your time. It's probably the most important thing I could recommend to anyone.
Wow. And then zip it.
Then let it go.
No, yeah, no, I'm
Whatever it
saying
is, just
zip it. Don't
do it.
defend it. Don't defend it or
Nope.
anything else.
Absorb
Just
it.
zip it and then evaluate it yourself. That's good advice. Because I know a lot of times I, trying to defend my actions because I thought I was right,
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Clifton, thanks for being on here today, buddy.
Thank
I
you,
look
sir.
forward to seeing you soon, and
You as well.
y'all stay tuned. I'll be putting out. I'm gonna start putting a calendar out every week too on who's
Oh, yeah.
coming up.
Great idea.
So, yep. All right. Thanks a lot, Clifton.
And thanks for joining us, everybody. Thank you, sir.